short for impressive speech, and I realized that how good Maori tribe and Geothermal developers. I mean, how good relation between the Maori tribes and the Geothermal developers has created. Yes. So our next speech would be Mr. Hori from Beppu City office. Yes, please. So he's, let me introduce a little, sorry. So since 1992, Mr. Hori has been working for Beppu City office, which is located at Oita Prefecture, and has been served for environmental management for 15 years in his career. In the last 5 years, his portfolio had been expanded to the administration of renewable energy, and he played a major role in executing a feasibility study of the new energy. So please.
てなことてなことてなあとは、大分県別府市からやってまいりました堀と申します。
Hello, I am from, my name is Hori and I am from Oita Prefecture, Beppu City. Today I would like to present regarding the current approaches and the situation of the geothermal development in Beppu City. Let me first show you the archipelago of Japan. We are part of the volcanic rim of the Pacific Rim, and Beppu City of Oita Prefecture is in Kyushu Prefecture. Sorry, Kyushu Island of the southern part of Japan. This area right here. Beppu City, I would like to now introduce Beppu City. The population is about 120,000 and population is currently decreasing. And people over 65 is a very large portion of the population and is a very high aging society. Hot springs and spas are a very important part of the income of the city. And 90% of the population is in the tertiary industry. The approximate temperature of the city is about 16 degrees, and rainfall is 1,500 millimeters in 1 year, which is a quite temperate area. Beppu Hot Springs is quite well known, and as you can see on the left-hand side, it used a very large amount and is number one in Japan. The number of wellheads and also the number of public baths is large, also the highest in Japan. If you look at the graph on the right-hand side, from the high economic development period of the 60s, the number of wellheads increased drastically between 1960 to 1970. This is the period where many of the artisan wells and the pumped up wellheads have reversed, and now there are more numbers of wellheads that are pump up wellheads. Another characteristic that we can see regarding Beppu Hot Springs, the hot spring was first opened in the period around 50,000 years ago. The water that seeps into the ground is warmed and returned to the surface as hot springs. That is the mechanism of the hot springs of this area. If you look at the map on the right-hand side,
こちらですね。
over here,
こちらなんですけれども、別府には2つの
there are two main heat sources in Beppu. One is Garandake and the other one is Tsurumidake.
山がありまして、その
There are
地
two
にあるもの
mountains.
と考え
These are two mountains and there are
別府
magma
はがこちら
underneath the
そ
volcanoes.
ちらに向
The
かいま
Beppu
して
Bay is on the right-hand
東西
side.
に
On
断層
both
が
the right and the left, there are faults.
この点線のところでございます。
The dotted line here are showing the
と
faults.
ころの断層に温泉地が広が
And
って
the fault
温泉地が広がっている。
Is where most of the hot
こちら
springs
が
are
市街地です。
positioned. The center between the two faults is the city area.
別府は先ほどお話あったようにですね。日本
As it was
地熱
discussed in
発電
previous
発祥の地でございまして
presentations, Beppu City was the first city in Japan to have a geothermal power plant.
地熱開発計画
Within the
今
development,
から35年
the
前
geothermal development, which happened in
1981年 別府温泉
In
の重要な源
1986,
であります
one of the
ガランダケ
key
の麓で
Garandake
地熱開発
heat
計画が
source,
持ち上がり
there was
それ
a
に対する市民の
plan
反
for
対運動が
creating a power
全体に
plant there,
広がったこと
but
で
there was a very
結果
strong
的に計画が
opposition by the
中止にな
local
ったと
people,
いった
and the
経緯
project was
今
stopped.
ご覧
This was in 1981.
中
In the center is the newspaper article showing the opposition of the people at that time. The title reads,
地熱開発
Geothermal Power
反対な
Plant
おこう
opposition is continuing. From tomorrow, there will be a petition movement.
行政のですね、地熱発電
The Beppu city is working
地熱エネルギーをはじめ
in
としました
using
新エネルギーに対する
geothermal energy as well as other new energies.
今から5年前
From,
2014年から始
since
まったば
5
かり
years ago, we have started an activity in 1914. Sorry, 2014. In 2014, we started an activity to look at the actual quantity of resources available in Beppu City. Based on that, we've decided that using geothermal energy will be the best way forward for Beppu City.
分かったところで
This was identified through this survey.
そうした、地熱エネルギーを利用する温泉バイナリー発電以後温泉発電と
Hot
申しますけれ
springs
ども
binary
それを支
power
援するため
plant
に
and also
2015
supporting such power plant development, and we allowed for the utilization of tap water in the cooling mechanism of the power plant. By allowing tap water provision with a lower price, we will be supporting the power generators.
また、同年
In addition to this, also in 2015, in supporting the new energy in general, we have started the Beppu City Local New Energy Vision. In this vision, there are basic 4 guidelines. And especially there is an emphasis put on geothermal energy, which is a characteristic of Beppu City.
定めたところでございます。
It is identified here. The policy is identified in the dotted line in the bottom portion of this slide. In the new energy vision, we also conducted a local community awareness survey. When we look at the content and the results from the survey, we see that the introduction of new energy and how to reduce the environmental burden, the people of Beppu City answered, the city should work towards reducing environmental burden and also to communicate information and provide information, also to conduct local community explanation sessions, and also to make sure that the conditions of creating new energy power plants need to be set very clearly. In this survey, we also asked about the utilization of hot springs energy and what the city should be doing. the citizens answered that people who operate hot spring
補助
spas
制度を求める声が
are looking towards subsidies.
こちらですね。
This chart here.
また市民の方は
Also,
市が保有する温
The
泉
local
施設
community,
に
people of the local
導入した
community
上で効
said
果や
that
課題をですね、情報発
they
信
wanted
して
to
ほしい
receive
という声が
information regarding the information through public spas and other public areas.
そうした新エネルギービジョンを作成すると同時にですね、並行して
In establishing this new energy vision, we also created in 2014 a regulation and situation ordinance for the primary procedures for local new energy.
エネルギーの
This
導
we
入
type
の事前手続き等に要する要項であり
This is the ordinance called the Primary Procedures for Local New Energy Installation.
こうして大規模な太陽光発電や
This is for utilization. This is to be utilized for the preliminary procedures for creating mega solar power plants as well as geothermal energy plants.
無秩序な温泉発電等の
This ordinance will make sure that there will be a necessary guideline to the operators. But at the same time, there was some limitation because the ordinance in many ways is not enforceable, and therefore we needed to find new ways and other ways to enforce these regulations. We have collected all of the necessary information from past learning, and we tried to create an ordinance that would specialize in the hot spring power generation. This is a new ordinance. This is called the Ordinance for Coexistence with the Community for Beppu City Hot Spring Power Generation. In this new ordinance, we have created penalties for people who did not follow the ordinance. And this way, we hope that the new ordinance will create a stronger enforcement of the hot spring power generation ordinance contents.
そして温泉発電をはじめとする地熱発電
Geothermal energy, including hot spring power generation, is covered within this ordinance. There are three key aspects to this ordinance. One is to the coexistence with the local communities. The second is compliance. And the third important aspect is the protection of the hot spring resource.
温泉の計画を
First of all, the operator or the developer needs to identify the plan, and they need to submit a prior consultation.
事業計画書を出していただき
They need to submit their project plan, and the city government will study the plan. The prior consultation instructor will be given to the operator, and the operator or developer needs to conduct the briefing to the local community, and they also need to conduct an environmental assessment. When all of this is completed, the operator or developer needs to submit a report of prior consultation. That by receiving this report and approval, the construction is approved.
周辺環境への配慮と保全につきましては
The prior survey for environment is an important aspect, and we need to
住
make
民の理解を得るように
this is also an important process for receiving agreement from the local communities.
別府市でこうした
In
温泉
Beppu
発電
City,
の導入
we
が
have
進んだ
started
主な
to use these actions to increase the usage of hot spring power generation. And we believe that the success of the hot spring power generation in Beppu City was also related to the environmental conditions. The Beppu City is a good area for shallow area high temperature hot springs, and also 80% of the wells are privately owned. These are the reasons why the private operations were able to create their own hot spring power generation on their own account, own private owned wells. Also, there are many wells that are currently not used, and there are springs that could be used for these purposes.
そのことは2016年の新聞
In
の
2016,
記事からも見て取れるわけですけれ
There
ども
was a newspaper article which is shown on this slide.
別府なんですけれども
This newspaper article
全国
covers
的に見ても温泉発電等の設備認
the
定の
number
本数は
of geothermal facilities throughout Japan, and it shows that Beppu City is the number one city with the most number of facilities. If we just look at the number of Beppu City, the number of approved or accredited facilities are increasing and it is doubling.
これを温泉発電等の設置状況につきまして
This is the current situation of the hot spring power generation. We are taking a bird's eye view of the city area of Beppu to show the locations of the facilities. Beppu City is located in a delta of two mountains, and there are faults on both sides, both on the north end and the south end of the city. Each of the hot springs are located near the faults in both the north and the south. And the hot spring area and the spring power generation areas and also the plant areas are also coincide in the same area. As introduced earlier, we have started a new ordinance in 2016, and the number of cases with issues have been decreasing. But we must admit that there are still operators and developers that have problem issues. Therefore, we need a further enforcement of the regulation and ordinance to these operators. The newspaper on the left-hand side is showing the complaint from the local community regarding hot spring power generation facilities that have not operated properly. The title on the top is showing that noise pollution and also ephemeral steam that is blocking view. The operators need to submit all necessary documentation regarding their new operations. In 2017, from the support from the Ministry of Environment, we have created new facilities which is looking at the project for Beppu City Hot Spring Energy investigation study. This is a large-scale survey which is to look at surveying 130 active ephemeral boiling springs, which is over 200 meters from sea level. Based on the survey contents, we have started since April of this year. We have started a Beppu Hot Spring Power Generation Council. This council is currently discussing the next steps. This slide that I am showing you right now is the results, some of the results from the survey. We will use the results of this survey. We will make the charts and graphs. We will analyze the results and data, and to make sure that the council sets up necessary measures. Also, based on the survey results and the scientific understanding, we will be protecting the geothermal resources, and also we will be looking at the development of geothermal resources so that both sides will be considered in the development of geothermal energy protection and development. Thank you very much for your kind.